Welcome to True Drew Podcast, your source for all things Nancy Drew. I'm your host, Avery, and on this podcast, we'll discuss everything from the Nancy Drew books, to computer games, to movie adaptations, and TV shows. Nothing is off the table. So if you're a True Drew, you'll definitely want to tune in for this podcast. Hey guys, and welcome to the 66th episode of True Drew Podcast, and today we're going to be talking about the fourth Nancy Drew computer game, Treasure in the Royal Tower. Okay, so I love this game. This is one of my favorites. I think this is a favorite of a lot of people in the Nancy Drew community. It's older, yes, but it's just such a classic, and it's got such cozy vibes because you're in this castle and you're snowed in, and it's one of the best games. I also feel like this is one of the Nancy Drew games that I really started to hit my stride with, because the first game I played was Message in a Haunted Mansion, and then I played Stay Tuned for Danger and Secrets Can Kill. Don't remember which one I played first, but pretty much back to back. And then I played Treasure in the Royal Tower. And I started to figure out how to move around within the game, how to navigate, and I also discovered, I think it was at this point that I figured out that Her Interactive had a forum where you could talk to people about the games, and you could get hints and spoilers, and that changed everything for me. That was the best. So, a couple of quick fun facts. This game actually came out in 2001. That seems like just yesterday to me, and also thousands of years ago at the same time. Like, what was I doing in 2001? I was in 6th grade, so I was probably rocking, like, really weird outfits. I dressed interesting in middle school, and I probably had braces. I think that's the year I got braces. That was an unfortunate time. We won't go back to that. Another cool fun fact, it doesn't really have to do with this game, but it does have to do with Marie Antoinette. I actually dressed up as Marie Antoinette back in like 2017, I think, for Halloween. I went all out. I ordered this huge ball gown. I did my hair up like Marie Antoinette's, and it's like 3-4 feet tall. I used kitchen sponges to acquire this like Cindy Lou Who Grinch-esque / Marie Antoinette style hair, and it probably took a full can of hairspray. It was insane. I also powdered my hair, and it turned out really, really cool. I actually took some pictures. Like, my dad and I went and took some pictures of me with a piece of cake. Like, let them eat cake. Even though, of course, she never said that. But it's still attributed to her falsely throughout history. But I apparently looked like I was part of an opera that had come to town where I live. I was actually downtown, and we were taking these pictures, and they were going to let me into the Tennessee Theater. And I should have just been like, oh yeah, I'm a alto, yeah. I'm part of this opera. Don't ask me to sing a note, though, because then it will be very apparent that I'm not part of this opera. But yeah, I'll have to post some of those pictures in my Instagram stories over on True Drew Podcast. So really quickly, let's discuss the game cover for Treasure in the Royal Tower. It's really, really pretty. It's this dark amethyst purple, and we have the castle, and there's all this snow on the ground, and this big iron fence that goes around the whole property. I really enjoy the cover for this game. I would give the cover art for Treasure in the Royal Tower 5 magnifying glasses. I really liked how in some of the earlier games, I think up to the final scene, the 5th game, they really picked a color and they went with it. Like, Secrets Can Kill was green, Stay Tuned for Danger was like this pinkish color, Message in a Haunted Mansion was blue. I just really liked that they did that. Oh yeah, so some of my memories of this game, I thought it would be cool to kind of just incorporate just things that I remember about playing this game. Like, where was I? Most of the time, I remember being at my grandparents' house and trying to solve the puzzles, and my grandfather was helping me, and it was just so fun because I feel like when I played this game, it was cold outside too. And of course, in the game, there's snow everywhere. I just loved that my actual environment matched the environment in the game. I mean, I wasn't in a castle, but there was snow on the ground. This game actually came out in August, but I don't think I ended up playing it till the winter months, like I got it for Christmas or something. So now let's jump in and discuss some of the characters that we see in Treasure in the Royal Tower. So first up we have Jacques Brunet. He is a very buff French skier. He's got this brunette, like, curtained style hair. Like, I feel like it's very 90s looking, and he's wearing a green button-down shirt and some jeans, 90s early 2000s style jeans. We have Beatrice Hotchkiss, who is a professor of French and an author. And she's rocking like this red-headed, it's honestly orange. Her hair is orange, and it's a beehive. It's the coolest hairstyle I've ever seen. And she wears this dress that has like this fall kind of pattern on it. It's got like purple and orange, like little flowers and leaves, and it's a cool dress. We also have Dexter Egan, who is an older man. He's a caretaker there at Wickford Castle. He has kind of the graying, very thinning hair. He's wearing like a blue button-down shirt, and I think some kind of, I don't know. I guess he's wearing black pants. I think the only time we see him is in a couple of cutscenes. Usually he's standing behind a desk. And finally, we have Lisa Ostrom, and she has like a pixie style haircut. She's brunette. She's wearing a red shirt and black pants. She's very like business casual, but I cannot unsee this. So somebody, I think it was on Reddit or something, but somebody said that basically Lisa Ostrom's hairstyle is the same as Brady Armstrong's in the final scene, and it makes me laugh every time I look at her. So now I'm gonna try and do my best to do some impressions of these characters. So first up we have Jacques Brunet. Ciao. Why does he say that? Ciao is Italian. That's not even French. Not that he has to speak in French all the time, but the amount of times that I find myself quoting Jacques Brunet in regular life situations is kind of embarrassing. Goodbye, little Miss Nightmare. Go away, or I will taunt you a second time. I'm so stupid. Next is Beatrice Hotchkiss. Hello, is that Jacques with my boots? I'm not usually much of a meat eater, but... very well. 50 drumsticks, please. Chicken, that is. Cluck, cluck. I love Beatrice Hotchkiss so much. Dexter Egan. Okay, Miss Drew. And Lisa Ostrom. My theory, my theory. Stay warm. I feel like Lisa kind of has a pipsqueak sort of voice. She talks like 2 octaves higher than a normal person. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Lisa Ostrom is a reporter or a journalist. So some of the voice actors for this game include Justin Barrett, who voiced Jacques, Carrie Healy, who voiced Hotchkiss, Thomas Stewart, who voiced Dexter. We have Tara V. Smith voicing Lisa. And Lonnie Manella, of course, is Nancy. We have Scott Carty as Ned, Claire Gallagher as Bess, and Maureen Nelson as George. So now I'll go ahead and read a quick game synopsis for Treasure in the Royal Tower. You, as Nancy Drew, go on vacation to Wickford Castle in Wisconsin, a castle and ski chalet owned by Carson's friend, Christy Lane. It's a trip for fun, but after getting snowed in, strange things start to happen, like the library getting vandalized and things being stolen from guests' rooms. Can you, as Nancy, solve the case? And is there more to this mystery than meets the eye? So, a couple of fun hidden things in this game that I wrote down. I said Lisa is reading a magazine, and there's an article in the magazine apparently on Maddie Jensen, who we met in Stay Tuned for Danger. There's also a time when you're talking to Bess and George where they mention Nancy's previous case, Message in a Haunted Mansion. I love when they sprinkle in little details like this from the other games. It's just so fun. Now, there is a funny Easter egg associated with this game. Apparently, if you dial Go Cats, like you spell out the letters by pushing the numbers on the phone, or McQuack or Arikari on the phone, you get meowing cats, quacking ducks, and a toucan or some kind of bird. I love how in the earlier games they would have like little things that you could call all these phone numbers, and I don't know how people discovered this. Like, how? I'm never one of those people that finds Easter eggs on my own. I always have to look them up on Nancy Drew wiki page. Also, in replaying some of the older games, you have to dial on these rotary phones or like traditional phones, like a landline, and it's so hard to move the mouse and like click each button. I don't remember which game. It's one of the later games. You can actually just type the numbers on your keyboard, which is very helpful. But it's so archaic and like ancient, but I still love it. So some of the allusions to real life that we get in this game, there is a lot of French history. We get to read and learn a lot about Marie Antoinette and the Bastille, all of that. And I think it was probably this game or maybe that Royal Diaries book about Marie Antoinette. That's probably where my fascination with her started. I just love reading books about her. Even to this day, I think she is a pretty fascinating monarch to read about. While I probably wouldn't go so far as Professor Hotchkiss to say that she's misunderstood, she's definitely a two-sided coin. It's very interesting to read books about her. So if you haven't and you like reading about monarchs, I would highly suggest reading one about Marie Antoinette. Okay, so another thing that I wrote under allusions to real life category is the game claims that Ezra Wickford invented chocolate milk. Like, Bess talks about it in one phone conversation and she's like, I'd like to learn some things about chocolate milk. But the actual inventor of chocolate milk, if Google is to be believed, was Sir Hans Sloane in the 1680s. That was a long time ago. Like, I love how people didn't know how to bathe properly back then because, like, I don't know, whenever I think of the 1600s or back, I'm like, oh gosh, bubonic plague and all these other crazy things. But we knew how to make chocolate milk. You want some Ovaltine? It reminds me of this meme that I saw about A1 steak sauce because it says it was made in the 1860s, and this meme was like, I love how during the middle of the Civil War, someone was like, you know what we really need in this nation? Steak sauce. That'll bring everyone together. Another funny allusion to real life in this game, there's a vending machine in the basement near Jacques, and it's got water in it, and it says Aquaria on the side of it. I know it's a play off of Aquafina, but like, thank goodness it's called Aquafina in real life and not Aquaria. Like, I picture people not wanting to drink that. Like, Aquaria, that sounds highly suspicious. That sounds a lot like diarrhea. Aquaria may cause uncomfortable bowel movements in public when you least expect it. Oh my gosh. So the second chances and deaths for this game, there's a lot more than I think we've discussed in the last few games. So Nancy can freeze to death outside if she doesn't get inside in time. She can get crushed by an elevator, and there's a really disturbing squishing noise. It's really bad. You can fall down the elevator shaft, fall in a pit under the stairs to the tower. I did that a lot as a kid. You can enter the library and not turn the alarm off in enough time and you get caught by Dexter. And you can mess with the ski lift too many times and let the culprit get away. This is a dangerous game. Hypothermia is no joke, kids. Neither are elevators. So I took several notes on this game while I was playing it, so let's go ahead and discuss. The first thing that I wrote down is I miss the glowing red magnifying glass cursor from the earlier games. I loved it. You knew what to click on. It was great. Like, after playing Mystery of the Seven Keys recently, I found myself really missing that. I just like it. It's just a nice touch, and it kind of clues me in as the player to what I'm supposed to do. I also really love the old teal border with Nancy's silhouette around the screen, and there's a little clock, a pocket watch type thing in the bottom left corner. Love that. Love the dialogue box. Like, I get why they went away from that because they opened up the screen so much more so you could see more stuff in later games, but it is nice in some of the older games. It's so classic. And I know I said this earlier, but this is such a cozy game. The harpsichord music, the howling wind outside, even the annoying bubbling radiator in Nancy's room, like, I actually kind of like it. It's just so, I don't know, it just makes me want to curl up in a blanket and sit in front of a fire with a book and some hot chocolate. I also love Nancy's basic little room in this game. She's got her Sassy Detective magazine and her flower suitcase with mom jeans, and there's a door on the other side of the room. I assumed it's a bathroom. That's what I always thought it was, or a closet. I hope it was a bathroom, though. Like, Nancy needs a bathroom. It's a huge castle. Surely everyone has their own bathroom. Also, I go thrifting quite a bit, and I see floral suitcases like Nancy's from these games all the time. I'm very tempted to buy them at Goodwill when I see them because they're only like $5 or $6, and I'm like, I'd have to fill them with mom jeans and a journal and some horse t-shirts. Okay, so the next note that I wrote down, Dexter says library instead of library. I know this is a pet peeve for some people. Like, I don't know, it doesn't really bother me, but I never noticed it till playing it this time. I was like, Dexter literally says library. I'm fascinated with voice acting and stuff though. Like, I want to know, like, does the actual person that voiced Dexter, does he say that normally? Or did he just, like, sit down and get into character and he was like, you know what, this guy would say library, not library. Is there that much thought that goes into it? I don't know. These are the things that I think about. So the next note that I took down, I used to love turning the basement lights off on Jacques and hearing him yell. I tried it this time though, and I don't know if, like, I have the games on Steam now. I don't play them like with the CD-ROMs like I used to. And maybe I just didn't turn the light off enough times, but like I feel like he would yell. It was very clear. He was like, ah, or something. Like he would yell something. And I don't think I made this up. Please, can someone confirm on Instagram? Anyways, Nancy has to turn these lights switches on and off to fix the lights on the stairwell because it's dangerous. Like, that's one of the things that Dexter asks you to do. Which, speaking of, for this being a vacation, Nancy gets asked to do a lot of things. She has to fix the lights on the stairwell. She has to fix the elevator. I don't think Dexter asks her to, but you do. She has to go tell Jacques to defrost chicken drumsticks for Professor Hotchkiss, get her boots, like all these things. And I'm like, Nancy, you're not getting paid to do any of this. I actually made a reel about this over on my Instagram, True Drew Podcast, because like I feel this, like when you go on vacation, you don't want to be working or doing things. Like, one of the most annoying things to me is when I get work-related calls when I'm out of town. I'm just like, I am not anywhere in that stratosphere right now. Like, please leave a message at the beep. So another one of the things I love from this game is Hotchkiss getting Nancy's name wrong over and over. Like, it's hilarious. She calls her Fanny, Mandy, Candy, Francie. Like, it's like, how many times can you butcher Nancy's name? I'll have a nice tip for you next time, Fanny. And all this is, of course, going on while we're going to get Hotchkiss a menu so she can order something other than couscous, and we have to ask her about her boots, and it's funny. But I do love the sound of her typewriter as you're walking down that hallway. It's so nice. And of course, Hotchkiss's boots would be purple. She wrote this book called Purple Hearted Queen about Marie Antoinette, and Marie Antoinette's favorite color, according to Hotchkiss, is purple. It's a color of royalty traditionally, but just kind of a nice touch. Hotchkiss is just one of the most iconic characters in the Nancy Drew game series. She's one of my favorites, but it's hilarious when she can't get couscous. She's like, I'll just get 50 chicken drumsticks. So the next thing that I wrote down, getting stuck in the elevator scared me as a kid. I remember the first time it happened, I was like, did I break the game? What's happening? But literally, the elevator stops between floors and you just see this wall in front of the old gate, because it's one of those old-fashioned ones where you pull the gate back and then the door is on the other side of it. But Nancy has to climb up out of the top of the elevator, up into the shaft, and she has to leap to the next floor. That is terrifying, because I don't know. I've heard horror stories about elevators, and I think it was around this time last year that I was in Disney World and I rode Tower of Terror for the first time. Oh my gosh, I underestimated how scary that ride was going to be because I knew it was coming. I think that was the worst part. I'm like, I know this elevator is going to just drop and I'm in it and it's going to be so scary. Thankfully, the elevator got stuck and it didn't drop, Nancy. That would have been really, really terrifying. But I don't know. I feel like the probability of an elevator accident is much higher than a boating accident if we're talking like in real life. So the next note that I have down, it's at this point in the game when we have the wrong locker combo. We get a locker combo on this little card in our room. And we go to open the locker and it won't unlock. So we talk to Jacques and he says, try 311. So we try the same combination on that locker and it opens Lisa's locker. And so, of course, we get to snoop, which is really, really fun. But we see that she has multiple identities and she does know Spanish. After earlier in the day, she told us she doesn't know Spanish. So can she be trusted? Some of these fake identities of Lisa's too, like Helen Carp. And I mean, she styled her hair differently. Like in one, she has like a short blonde, blunt haircut and she's wearing glasses. It's dedication. The next thing that I wrote down is Hotchkiss is such an icon, and I know I've said this, but she has great one-liners. That pumpkin fall print dress with her red hair and green eyeshadow is just amazing, and her doing her best work at 3 a.m. Like, she's a night owl. She's so relatable, and she's just one of my favorite characters. I also love that we see the remnants of the chicken bones after she's ordered the drumsticks when we're able to go in her room. It's so funny. And just watching a video on her little handheld camera in her room and having to charge the battery. Like, I remember using a camera like that. But it's at this point in the game when Hotchkiss has started to trust us because we answered her little quiz question about French history. And so she lets us get a room key and we can go in her room and look around and we can see her theory, you know, the stuff she's been typing up on her typewriter. And Hotchkiss has a couch in her room. Like, she must have a suite. Her room is slightly nicer than ours. So the next thing that I took note of while playing, I said exploring the elevator shaft was always so spooky to me as a kid. There's all this like noise and sound effects and stuff, and going through the air ducts, like, it's so loud. But there's this little offshoot to the left, or I guess it's on the right depending on which way you're going, but I always thought for sure that someone was going to come out and get me as a kid. So I would always speed crawl past that part, just trying to get past it, because I thought Dexter is gonna get me. And speaking of Dexter, when Dexter comes into the library and we have to hide back in the air duct, I about peed myself as a kid. Like, you have to hide so fast, and sometimes I couldn't turn around fast enough. But this game just has so many great snooping and hiding moments, and the foreshadowing and like breadcrumbs in the plot are so good. Like, is it any wonder that this game is so good? Because the book that it's based off of is also fantastic. I can't wait till we get to cover that on the podcast too. So after Dexter leaves, we're able to explore the library. We see this huge hole where someone has literally taken like an axe or something to the wall, and like claw marks. It kind of reminded me of like Beauty and the Beast. It's very just savage looking, and there's books thrown everywhere. There's potted plants turned over. Like, somebody really destroyed this library. And so Nancy's trying to piece all of this together because they didn't call the police. I think because Christy Lane didn't want the publicity. Like, they never call the police for things like this. But we're trying to figure out, what is somebody looking for? Why did they vandalize this library? They're obviously searching for something. Because this castle that Nancy is staying in, Wickford Castle, it's up in Wisconsin, but the book and the game describe it as having parts of it, like the tower is imported from France, which also, like, wow, that's gotta have been very expensive. But Nancy starts to speculate maybe somebody is trying to find their way up into that tower, because legend had it this tower was somewhere that Marie Antoinette spent a lot of time. So the next thing that I wrote down is, dang, Dexter and Ezra Wickford had a complicated relationship. So Dexter kind of lies to us in the beginning. He doesn't really tell us the full story about why he's at the castle, but he knew Ezra Wickford. Ezra Wickford, I think, just like adopted him and took him in. But you see these books in this secret room off of the library, and one of them says when he was good, he was very good. And then the other one says when he was bad, he was horrid. So Ezra Wickford made these like scrapbooks of all of Dexter's good moments and all of the times he was bad, like he stole from people. It's so messed up. Like, I don't care if you made chocolate milk, dude. Like, you are such a jerk. So yeah, Dexter got in trouble with the law for stealing, and Ezra wrote a poem about it. The one thing I do like about this room off of the library, I love the candle melting animation where it exposes this key that's in the candle, and we get to use that key later to find this red medallion in the garden outside. But I love the little cutscenes like that. Also, the medallions in this game are gorgeous. There's a red one, a blue one, and a green one, and I think they're supposed to have been jewels that Marie Antoinette had dismantled from a crown or some of the crown jewels, but they're really neat. We find the red one out in the garden, and we have to twist this statue head around. We find the green one eventually outside in the shed, and then we find the blue one, I think it is, under the pillow on the couch in Hotchkiss's room. So we're starting to piece things together since we've talked to Dexter, Lisa, Jacques, and Hotchkiss. Something of value is in this castle, possibly in the tower, and it probably has to do with Marie Antoinette. So maybe this is why a person is vandalizing the library. So the next thing that I wrote down, the sound of sawing and finding Jacques in the dungeon is so crazy. Like, I remember going down there after I finally like worked up the nerve as a kid, and I went down there at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and you just hear this sawing, and you go around the corner to this gate that you've found, and Jacques is there with a saw just trying to cut through it. So of course he gasps, and you and Jacques have this exchange like, what are you doing here? I don't know, what are you doing here? And so he confesses that his grandfather was a master carpenter, and he helped work on the tower. He helped dismantle it and then help it to get prepared to ship to the States, I think. And he said that he came across a compartment in the tower and found a journal. The way he says journal, journal. But Jacques' grandfather speculated that it must have been Marie Antoinette's because she spent a lot of time up there in the last years of her life in the tower. And I mean, most people back then, like some people could read and write, but some people were illiterate. So Marie Antoinette was royalty. It was probably hers. So it was Jacques' grandfather's dying wish that Jacques go back and find the journal and return it to the people of France where it belongs. Or actually, I think it was Jacques' great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather. It would have been older than a grandfather. So Nancy basically bargains with him, and she's like, okay, well, you need to tell Christy Lane about what you've been doing, and you need to be honest with your employer. And Jacques is like, okay, but he's like, I didn't vandalize the library. That was not me. That beautiful library. Like, I wouldn't do that. And so now Nancy's even more confused. She's like, well, he's here vandalizing this gate. Should I believe him? Should I trust him? So Jacques makes a pact with Nancy, and he says, look, I have this medallion. It's a blue medallion. It's up in my locker. Go get it. And so Nancy agrees to go do that. She goes up there and uses the combination. And while we're looking in Jacques' locker, we also see that he has a visa with immigration that's almost up to expire, and his fiancée, Isabella, is apparently getting kind of impatient and wants to get married. So I think these things are supposed to make us wonder about Jacques and cast suspicion on Jacques. And also, I should mention, he says that he wants to redeem himself because he lost one of the last Olympic Games where he was skiing. He fell flat on his face in front of the French people, and he was like, I disappointed everyone, and if I could find this journal, it would change things. So after we've looked at all these clues, and then we click on the blue medallion, Nancy gets hit over the head, and then the next thing we know, we're waking up in our bed, which Nancy probably shouldn't have gone to sleep. Like, that's concussion city waiting to happen. But we check our voicemail messages on the phone, and we have one from Dexter. He wants to talk to us, and I think Jacques leaves a voicemail. So you go downstairs to talk to Dexter, and I think it was Jacques or Dexter, or maybe both of them, that found Nancy laying on the floor. But Dexter's main concern, first he's like, are you okay? Do you know what happened? Nancy's like, no, it just, something hit me out of nowhere behind me. I don't know who or what it was. And then Dexter says, well, I noticed you had some red dirt on your shoes. Where did that come from? So we can lie to Dexter, or we can be honest with him, but that red dirt came from down there near the gate where we were talking to Jacques and he was sawing at it. And if we're honest with Dexter, he says, well, I kind of knew where it came from. You know, I went down there as a kid. You know, Ezra Wickford would, you know, test me and see if I could get up into the tower and stuff. And so he's kind of proud of us, which is kind of unexpected. I thought that Dexter was going to be so mad at us, probably because of all the times that I messed up and he caught me in the library, which, come to think of it, why was Dexter more mad when we were in the library, but not mad when we were trying to get up into the tower? Like, I don't know if it's because it plays on his childhood and his sentimentality or something, but I mean, I guess he doesn't want us in the library because it's technically a crime scene, but yeah. But we can ask Dexter for hints, like, do you know how to do this puzzle? Or do you have any advice for trying to get into the tower? And he's pretty upfront with us. I remember when I got to this point in the game when I was a kid, I started to warm up to Dexter. I was like, he's not such a bad guy after all. He's not just this mean old man. Oh, but when we go to talk to Jacques Brunet, he is such a jerk. He talks about like, well, Nancy, I found you and you were catnapping on the floor. And Nancy's like, well, I went up here to get the medallion like you told me to, Jacques. It's not my fault that somebody hit me in the head. Like, what if it was you? Or what, it's just, Jacques is more concerned about the medallion than he is the fact that we got hit over the head. He doesn't care about our health or safety. And he just gets all huffy and he's like, keep the stupid medallion, it's yours. He says it just like that. Horrible French accent and all. But I don't know, from that comment, I'm like, did he think that Nancy stole it and then pretended to lay out on the floor? Like, seriously? So the next thing that I wrote down, I was talking about the medallions earlier and how I think they were dismantled parts of a crown of Marie Antoinette's. So there actually was a real scandal shortly before Marie Antoinette died in real life, and it was called the Affair of the Diamond Necklace. And this guy named Cardinal Rohan was convinced by Jeanne de la Motte, who I believe was a French prostitute, that Marie wanted to write letters to him. She convinced him that, oh, she wants to be your friend, which was funny because Rohan and the Queen had a relationship where they hated each other. So this woman, this con artist, she had Cardinal Rohan convinced that Marie Antoinette was in love with him, and so she wrote these fake letters pretending to be Marie Antoinette, and she had him commission a diamond necklace, and then she took off with the money. So this was a PR nightmare for Marie Antoinette. This really kind of was the final nail in her coffin. Because prior to this in France, there had been a lot of grumblings among the people because they were starving and they felt like the monarchs in charge were not doing anything about it. They didn't care. And so the fact that they thought that Marie Antoinette had commissioned this necklace while they're out starving, it didn't look good. Like I said, it's fascinating history. I love how we get to learn so many educational things in these games. Like, even if we don't learn the things within the game itself, it encourages us to research and find out more about some of these things that we learn, or at least that was the impact that it had on me as a kid. It's also just cool how Her Interactive weaves real life history into the Nancy Drew games. So the next thing that I wrote down, I loved finding the tower room. I loved doing the little chain puzzle to get across the pit. And then the little marble puzzle where you have to move these little pieces around to get the stairs to extend from the wall. That was so cool. And then actually just going up into the tower room, there's all this gold leaf on the walls and checkered floor, and there's a picture of Marie Antoinette. It's like what you would imagine a French chateau's tower to look like. So as Nancy, we're able to go over to that gold gilt leaf on the wall, and we find what looks like a outline of a cabinet, and we move all these pieces around, and once we open it, we find the journal. So when we take the journal to Hotchkiss to translate at 3 a.m., because it is in French, she mentions that Lisa offered to clean her room. And this is so weird and suspicious because Hotchkiss is like, well, I remember telling that Leslie that I didn't need my room cleaned. I love that Hotchkiss's lack of memory when it comes to names extends to Lisa and not just us. So when we talk to Lisa again, she mentions that she saw Dexter acting suspicious and carrying a green thing out to the maintenance shed. So when we go to check this out, we get locked outside, which is super scary because Nancy starts shivering and she's like, I'm gonna freeze. And so we could freeze to death out here. So we have to set off the ski lift to get someone's attention to come and unlock the door and let us come inside. So Dexter comes to the rescue and he's mad at first, but then Nancy's like, well, someone locked me outside. And then he's like, well, that was good thinking on your part then. But isn't it interesting that Lisa just happens to mention that she saw Dexter acting suspicious and going outside, and then when we go check on that lead, we get locked outside. It's not looking good for Lisa, and also just the fact that she has all those multiple fake identities, and when we confront her about that, she just brushes it off like, I'm a reporter, I'm allowed to have, alternate identities. I do love that as Nancy we lie to Lisa though, because she says, well, did you find anything interesting out there? And then we just say, nope. Not a thing. But now we do have the green medallion and the red medallion, and if we go back to Hotchkiss's room while she's down in the lobby, we find the blue medallion that we previously were hit over the head for. So now we have 3 medallions. And also throughout this game, I love calling Bess and George for hints or just to talk. Like, I know in the last couple of Nancy Drew games, like the most recent ones we've had, Midnight in Salem, Mystery of the Seven Keys, we don't really get to talk to Bess and George, and I really miss that. So the little camera that I mentioned earlier that Hotchkiss has in her room, if we watch it, it's so cute because she's just like walking around and you can tell she like doesn't really know how to use it because she's like, "Come in, Hotchkiss, Hotchkiss to Earth." And so we see her filming this little alcove around the corner from her room. There's a picture of Marie Antoinette, and there's this little indent in the wall. And so we hear Hotchkiss, once we recharge the camera battery, putting the medallion in that indentation. So as Nancy, we can go over to that alcove and we can put all the different medallions in and then look through the jewel, and we see these symbols that we are able to translate later. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about this, but right near that alcove, there's also some steps that go down and there's like a dead-end wall. Wickford Castle, for being so beautiful, it has so many weird doors that go to nowhere. It really reminds me of the Winchester Mansion, which I don't know if anyone has ever been to that, but it's out in California. Sarah Winchester, she thought she was haunted by the ghosts of all the people killed by her husband's rifle company that he, got rich off of. And it just reminds me of that because in that mansion, there's a lot of doors that go to nowhere, and she was constantly building onto it for years to escape the evil spirits. Just kind of something cool. So it's also usually at this point in the game when Hotchkiss has finished translating Marie's diary, so we're able to look through that, and some of the symbols look familiar to the ones we saw looking through the medallions. So we're able to use those at the very last part of this game. So back up in the tower room, there's these indentations on the middle of the floor, and they have these same symbols that we keep seeing. And there's also this weird, like, square symbol in the middle, and we are able to chip away the tile on Marie Antoinette's picture where the purple rose is, and if we do that, we find the square piece that goes in the center. So once we get all the medallions organized correctly, this little podium comes up out of the floor, and there's a huge diamond on it. And so the diamond discovery at the end of this game and the villain reveal are everything. So the villain is, dun dun dun, Lisa Ostrom. So it was not only Lisa that trapped us in the elevator, she hit us over the head, she locked us outside, she also vandalized the library, and she planted the green medallion in the shed and the blue medallion under the pillow in Hotchkiss's room. Just your classic villain who's not smart enough to figure it out, so she's just lazy and is like, I'll let Nancy Drew figure out everything for me. I think this is also one of the most legendary villain confessions at the end of a game because Lisa has no remorse. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna go live it up and have pool boys wait on me and take this honkin' rock with me. And she pulls out mace, like pepper spray, and she pepper sprays us in the face. And she's like, yeah, my spicy devil villain venom will keep you from going after me. I'm not gonna lie, I have some mace and I want to put a label on it that says spicy devil villain venom. Not because I'm a villain. Am I the villain? I don't think I'm the villain. No. So I could use it on villains. Like, hopefully I don't ever have to, but So now that we as Nancy have been sprayed in the face with pepper spray, Nancy's like coughing and she's like, why did you vandalize that beautiful library? And it's just like, oh gosh, I can just picture like your eyes watering. Like, that would be so horrible. So then Lisa bolts from the room and takes the diamond with her, but those in the know that there is a square little button next to the door to the tower room, and if you push that, the stairs will retract, and Lisa falls straight into a pit. In the words of Jojo Siwa, karma's a snitch. You should have known better. This scene is so satisfying to me because Lisa just falls in the pit, and it's so funny because in her little pipsqueak voice, she's like, Nancy, help me out. It smells down here. I'm like, well, you should have thought about that before you sprayed us in the face. You and your crazy Brady Armstrong hair, you could just sit there and chill out till the police get here. So at the end of this game, Lisa ends up getting arrested, and the journal goes back to France. We get a happy ending, and we get the classic letter at the end. And then the last note that I wrote down, I just wrote this as kind of a last minute thing. The only reason that I won't play this game sometimes is because of the out of the way route you have to take, like through the library and through the air ducts. Like sometimes it's really time consuming and I'm like, do I want to deal with that when I replay this game? Like, I love this game, but if that's the one complaint that I have, it's probably that. So now we're to the part of this game episode where we talk about some of the funniest quotes from Treasure in the Royal Tower. So one of my favorites is just something that Nancy says, and she says this so many times to Dexter. Like, I'm sure he gets annoyed. He's like, oh, this kid. But she always just says, okay, see ya, Mr. Egan. It's just very hunky-dory. It's like, golly gee willikers, Mr. Egan. The next quote that I have is from Lisa, and I love how when she's first meeting Nancy, she's super gossipy, and she's like, oh, we got scandal, honey. She also says, did we stumble onto the set of As the Castle Turns or what? Given the fact that she says this and then she's also reading that article about Maddie Jensen, I think it's safe to say that Lisa is a soap opera fan. Another quote from this game that I like is one that Nancy says, and she says, hello there, dead end. My name is Nancy Drew. She says this when she opens one of the doors, and I think there's just a wall there. And this quote, I don't know why, but I find myself quoting this Jacques Brunet quote all the time when I'm having like a hard time and I just want to get coffee or just chill out. And so it's, you should be sitting by the fire, sipping cocoa, Nancy, not running around doing errands for Dexter. So I'll say this in my head or out loud sometimes, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I should be sitting by a fire sipping cocoa. Like, life is too short. So another funny quote that I really like is when Hotchkiss says, Virginia Woolf never endured such interruptions. Hotchkiss has so many iconic quotes in this game, like when she says, rock and roll, dear. Another quote of Jacques that I find myself saying a lot, like when I have to cook or something at my house, I'll be like, ooh la la, what does he think I am? A sous chef? Like, sorry, it's ramen noodles tonight. And the last quote that I love from this game is from Bess and George. When they sign out over the phone, they just go, watch out for weird people. I use that too many times in real life. So as far as some of the best and worst puzzles for this game, I love the puzzles with the medallions. It's so fun finding the medallions and then using them to look through the peephole and arranging them on the floor. I like the garden gate puzzle, the statue puzzle that we have to twist its head around to get the red medallion. The leaf puzzle in the tower that we have to arrange all the leaves, like to get the journal. That's really cool. I also like the elevator puzzle, not like having to figure out how to get into the library, not that, but the little sliding metal things that are like, like I can't even do the sound effect. That actually sounded pretty good. But yeah, you have to get them all and they keep sliding until you figure out what order to push them in. That's fun for me. I'm sure some of you guys are like, your impressions and your sound effects are not as good as you think they are. I will live in that delusion though. Now the worst puzzles for me, I didn't like the marble sliding puzzle until I figured it out. Once I figured it out, it was fine. I didn't like the ski lift puzzle because I would always click. It's one of those things where you have to click to get these levers at certain levels, but if you click one, it moves another. It's frustrating. Also because Nancy's like, I'm gonna freeze, and it's like, Nancy, I am working here. Calm down. Now let's talk about the music in this game. The music in Treasure in the Royal Tower is some of my favorite. I love listening to the playlists that I have on YouTube of just the Nancy Drew game soundtracks, but this one in particular, it's very heavy on the harpsichords, and it reminds me of like music that you'd hear like in a French medieval court or something. It's just so cool. So here are just a few of my favorite tracks. First, we have this track called Library, or Library, according to Dexter. This part's really good. Next we have this title called Warm, which I really like. This next one is just the Treasure in the Royal Tower theme. This is what plays when Nancy reads the letter in the beginning. But wait, there's more. It picks up speed right here, and it's really nice. Like, does that not get you in the mood to solve a mystery in a castle? Because it does for me. So this next track is called Garden, and it plays in, you guessed it, the garden. I really like this next track, Enchanted, also. And then the hallway music. I mean, the soundtrack for this game gets 5 magnifying glasses from me. Kevin Manthe had some of the best soundtracks for the Nancy Drew games. And as far as an overall game rating for Treasure of the Royal Tower, I say 5 magnifying glasses. This is a classic game. It's so great. It's got a good plot. It's got good characters, setting. The music is out of the park. And we get to snoop, and there's dangerous situations. It's such a good mystery. So that concludes today's episode for Treasure in the Royal Tower. This is one of my favorite games. It's so great. I'm gonna have to do a ultimate ranking of all the games at some point, but such a good game. So for next week's episode, I wanted to surprise you all. We're gonna start doing some of the movies and TV shows, and the first thing we're going to jump into is the 1970s Hardy Boys / Nancy Drew TV show. So this one has been highly requested for a while, and I thought I would tackle season 1, and I didn't realize that they flip-flopped each week. Some weeks they would have the Hardy Boys on an episode, and then the next week would be Nancy Drew. So I think it works out to about 6 or 7 episodes, so I am so excited to talk about this on the show next. So I will see you guys next week to discuss the 1970s Nancy Drew show. Until next time, thank you for listening to this episode of True Drew Podcast. Can't get enough of the podcast? Then check out my subscription series, True Drew Files, available on Apple and Spotify. For Nancy Drew books and merchandise, you can check out my website, www.truedrewpodcast.com. For business inquiries, you can contact me at truedrewpodcast@gmail.com, or you can connect with me on Instagram at True Drew Podcast.